Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robert Lappner. I'm the Dean of the NYU School of Continuing and Professional Studies, and it's a great honor to welcome you. President Saakashvili, distinguished guests, we are delighted to be able to host tonight's event. Our university, our school, and of course the Center for Global Affairs is honored to have this chance. We are also grateful to our colleagues at the SUNY College of Optometry. I believe the President Heath is with us, for hosting us this evening. In a sense, one could say that the universities of New York are welcoming the President of Georgia. Our own school, as you know, has a long history of educating professionals in graduate and undergraduate study in various fields that are associated with New York's leadership on the world stage. And of course, for more than 75 years, we have been organizing learning opportunities for the general public. Tonight's event is part of the long-standing series of our Center for Global Affairs to provide a platform for engaging world leaders in a mediated public dialogue. Before introducing our moderator and our guest of honor, please help me thank the extraordinary staff of the Center for Global Affairs under the direction of Divisional Dean Barry Jelinek. And I'd like to thank especially Alice Eckstein and who was hiding in the corner, and Anna Shubashvili, who was previously with Georgia's mission to the UN, who has been an invaluable and essential colleague in putting on tonight's event. I trust most of you here are familiar with our moderator this evening, Alon Ben-Meir. An expert on the Middle East for the past 25 years, Dr. Ben-Meir has been directly involved in various negotiations and has operated as a liaison between Israel and top Arab officials. He serves as a senior fellow at our own Center for Global Affairs, where he has been teaching courses on the Middle East and international negotiations for 18 years. He is also a senior fellow and the Middle Eastern Studies Project Director at the World Policy Institute. He has authored 6 books on Middle East policy, and one more is in progress. His articles appear regularly in the World Press and specialized websites from the Middle East Times to the Christian Science Monitor, Le Monde, the Political Quarterly, Israeli Policy Forum, Gulf Times, Jerusalem Post, and the Huffington Post, to name a few. He is also featured regularly on CNN, Fox, PBS, ABC, and Al Jazeera in both the Arabic and English language broadcasts, as well as NPR. Dr. Ben-Meir holds his master's degree and doctorate from Oxford University. It is now my great honor to introduce Mikheil Saakashvili, the President of Georgia. Following the Rose Revolution, President Saakashvili was elected on January 4th, 2004, with 96% of the vote, becoming Georgia's second president, and at 37, the youngest national president in Europe. He was re-elected with a compelling majority in 2008. Prior to his leadership as president of his country of 4.6 million people, as a member of the Human Rights Committee of Georgia, he secured prisoner exchange agreements between Georgians and Abkhaz, and also between Armenians and Azeris, captured in the fighting for Nagorno-Karabakh. In 1992, at the Norwegian Institute of Human Rights, he organized a conference between Georgians and South Ossetians, which led to the first signed ceasefire agreement. In 1995, he was elected to Georgia's parliament, initiating Georgia's first merit-based selection of judges. He also became the first Minister of Justice to address prison reform. On October 12th, in 2000, he was appointed Minister of Justice of Georgia, where he continued to confront and investigate post-Soviet Georgian corruption. As a result of the evidently falsified 2003 parliamentary election results, along with late Member of Parliament Zurab Zvania, he united the public in protest in what came to be called the Rose Revolution. He is a native of Tbilisi, Georgia, and graduated with honors from the Kiev University Institute of International Relations. An Edmund S. Muskie Fellowship brought him to study uptown at Columbia University, where he earned a master's degree in law in 1995. He's still welcome at NYU. From 1995 to 1996, he studied law at the doctoral level at GW University's National Center of Law in Washington, D.C. And, not insignificantly, in 1995, he was admitted to the New York bar and practiced commercial law for nearly a year at Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler before he returned to Georgia. In 1995, he also became the first former Soviet citizen to obtain a prestigious diploma in comparative law of human rights from the Strasbourg Human Rights International Institute. Although we cannot quite claim President Saakashvili as a native son, his connections to New York are profound, and perhaps they serve to enforce the leadership path he has taken for Georgia in diversifying its economy and expanding its global markets and its global partnerships. Please welcome our honored guests.
Thank you. I'd like to speak from the audience.
Thank you, Dean Leipner, for this wonderful, thrilling introduction. While I'm an uptown alumni, finally I'm very happy to make it to the downtown, to the NYU, to see all of you here. And I can tell you that since the time I've been a student, I was a student, actually this university has gone a long way through like an underdog. I was telling the dean before, it was an underdog when I was here. And then instinctively, no matter to which school I went, I've always been and I always am on the side of the underdogs, especially successful ones. And so congratulations on what the achievement the university has. It's always nice to talk to young leaders of tomorrow, even if it sometimes makes me feel very old. But today's dreams can become tomorrow's realities. That's my experience of my life. That is exactly the spirit that have kept alive in the Georgian government since the Rose Revolution of 2003. I would like to share with you some lessons I have drawn from Georgia's recent metamorphosis, hoping to feed your appetite for noble politics, understood a way of turning ideals into realities. 7 years ago, Georgia was basically a failed state. An entrenched bureaucracy was killing any initiative in the society. It was not only unemployment and poverty, but crumbling and inadequate infrastructure, an economy shackled by corruption. The situation was so catastrophic that we had to start in a way and basically from the scratch, and it was our chance. Indeed, it was a very young team. I was 35 when I became leader of that revolution and soon elected by president. We were aware, the others were even younger than me, aware that half steps and overcautious measures would be just drops in the ocean, an ocean in which we were sinking rapidly. We decided to turn our nation, but very young independent state, into a laboratory for reforms. Who were we? Nothing more and nothing less than a group of idealist young men and women from student organizations, non-governmental groups, some kind of opposition, but also civil society, parties, just individuals. From one day to the next, we were in charge in a very hostile geopolitical environment with an increasingly authoritarian and revisionist Russian Federation at our door. Slogans and protests and policy papers, the tools we used as opposition and civil society leaders, would no longer suffice. What could we do? Were we just going to take over, replacing the old generation with a new one to basically do the same things and over? Or were we going to stay true to our dreams and to all of our people and who bravely came into the streets for many, many months, weeks, days, through all the bad weather, to basically support democratic change? We took the risk of at least trying to turn our values into concrete policies. Of course, we didn't succeed in everything, didn't expect to succeed in everything. And we made mistakes, as we were expected to make mistakes. My favorite philosopher, Immanuel Kant, said, you cannot be free, ready to be free, until actually you are free. It means that freedom is always a risk, but a risk you must take if you want to be an actor in your own life and your own nation's destiny. There was no book to guide us how to turn a failed post-Soviet state into a modern European democracy. But we took the risk of value-based politics. And today, development specialists and regional leaders, including Russians, and also Ukrainians, many others, As surprising that might sound, especially in case of Russians, come to our country in search of ideas and new ways to address old problems. Some generously say Georgia's successes is due to transformational leadership. In reality, transformational leadership means that any government systematically decided to empower people to allow them to change their own lives and their own social environment. This is the way you can transform a society without gulags and guillotines, by allowing initiative, by giving to individuals and groups a say and a stake in their own nation's destiny. Most people who visit Georgia are very much surprised by the age of the leadership, the fact that we are a nation run by 30 years old and 20 years old, with 20 years old becoming more and more prominent. This is both the result and the cause of what The Economist magazine recently characterized in a very big article as Georgia's mental revolution. Georgians have stopped thinking of their country as post-Soviet one. Indeed, it's the first post-Soviet country that no longer reminds anything that's left over from Soviet past. Before we felt imprisoned by that past, now we feel liberated by the promise of the future. And with this radical transformation of minds and souls, we have laid foundations for social justice and economic success. This is our great victory, creating something that goes far beyond the leaders and parties that led the Rose Revolution, far beyond any leadership, as transformational as it might be, something that nobody owns and nobody can suppress. Neither us nor anybody else, a change of paradigms, a mental revolution. I will help explain this by giving a few examples of some of our most unexpected but successful reforms. Our first comprehensive reform was the total change of our law enforcement bodies. We started by firing our entire traffic police force. People thought we were impulsive, naive, crazy even. Some people are still believe and convinced that we are crazy. But the police had long been a centerpiece of symbol of that reform. Strangely so, when we fired the police, crime rate that was expected to skyrocket went down. And that really showed that the nations, there was a specific moment of the nation's history when everything seems possible, when values become the base of politics, when you have the feeling of inventing your own future. Thanks to these initial measures, since 2003, we have made great progress in Transparency International's corruption index, more progress than any other state in the world. A second crucial and symbolic reform was transformation of the energy sector. This was a country that had so many blackouts that we were counting the hours when we had electricity and not the opposite. Within a few years, we became new net energy producer and exporter. We developed hydroelectric resources and the infrastructure needed to transmit the new power across Georgia to our neighbors. A little known fact is that we transit power at standard market rates into Russia, even during the August war in 2008, where Russia was invading, where Russian planes and artillery were pounding our cities, our citizens, our villages, our roads. We continued to transmit its power. We did this because of another aspect of our mental revolution. We refuse to see the economy as a political tool. We believe that politics has its limits and that government should not interfere. We have built a highly favorable investment climate based on three key factors: minimal economic regulations, low taxes, and, as I mentioned, strong anti-corruption enforcement. Georgia is a small nation that is remote from commercial centers and financial capitals in a shaky geopolitical environment, to put it mildly. Our only chance to attract investors was to become a kind of regional haven for them. We are now ranked as one of the easiest places in the world to do business, first in Eastern and Central Europe, 11th in the world, according to the World Bank. We hope to get to the top 10 this year. Before the invasion of 2008, we had double-digit growth. We suffered relatively less from world crisis, and this year we already have 6.5% growth. We hope to get, and as we project, to get back to double-digit one next year. There is still a lot to be done, obviously, and we are more committed than ever to pursue our reform and democratization. And all this despite the permanent provocations coming from the north. As many of you might know, the two Georgian regions, about 20% of our total territory, are currently occupied by Russia. There has been extensive coverage of this fact. But it is worth noting that there were once free areas in Georgia that were artificially separated from the rest of the nation when the Soviet Union collapsed. Today, while South Ossetia and Abkhazia are isolated from the world, Ajara, the third region, has become a centerpiece of new Georgian economy, a flourishing economic center for our country that is gaining the attention of investors all around the world. Last year, for the last several years, the 150,000-person town of Batumi received $4 billion in private investment. I'm sure all regions of Georgia will someday benefit from this development, including the occupied ones. I also hope one day we'll be able to have normal and productive conversations with our neighbors to the north. The occupation of our territories, and that's how it's qualified, it's illegal occupation also by the United States. This occupation is unsustainable. The economic, military, and political costs are increasingly unpopular in Moscow, and I hope that Russia will modernize, change, and become a key partner of independent and European Georgia. But for that to happen, the Russian leadership has to understand that development requires the respect of basic rules and values, that you cannot diversify your economy. If you send to the Gulag your most successful and gifted businessman like Mikhail Khodorkovsky, that you cannot create a dynamic society if you kill your most talented journalists like Anna Politkovskaya and your bravest human rights activists like Natalia Estemirova. That you cannot solve ethnic issues through killing and mass killing and unleashing brutal warlords on your own population. That last but not least, you cannot be considered as a rational international player if you invade with the purpose to dismember your neighbor if your army is leading ethnic cleansing campaigns. People might have thought in our region that there was no choice between a Yeltsin type, there was only choice there was between Yeltsin type of chaos and Putin's style of order. Georgia has shown that another path is possible. And what looked idealistic 7 years ago has proven to be more than realistic. I hope this helps you to believe, the young people also who are here, that you can change the world, that true politics and values go together. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.